Amen. How many of y'all are having a good day today? Not a lot of hands. Who's having a great day today? Okay, so before we start, how many of y'all know what worship is? Can you see like a raise of hands or something? Okay, who wants to tell me the definition of worship? Worship really is our response to God for who He is and what He has done in our life. Sometimes worship can be without singing. Most people think, I can worship. Worship without singing is not worship, but worship can happen without singing. And us as Christians, we admire a lot of things in this world today. Some of it might be like music, sports, your favorite TV actor. And all of us are like, oh my Lord, this guy's crazy good. And we start adoring that person. We're like, oh my God, this guy's actually good. And we start giving them the credit that they deserve. But us as Christians, we're supposed to give that credit to God because He's the one who created everything. Why do we have to praise creation when we can praise the Creator? So over the past few weeks, we've been learning about the life of David. We learn about it from the time he was chosen to the time he faced Goliath and many more. But today we're going to look at the worship life of David. How many of y'all know David was a musician? And what instrument did he play? Who wants to answer? Okay, I see a big hand over there. I'm coming over there. And what did he play, sir?
He played the guitar. No, the harp.
Well, technically right, but not really. Fun fact, David played an instrument known as the kinnor. This instrument looked like a harp, but it sounded very different. How many of y'all have seen the size of a real harp? For those who don't know, a harp is way taller than me. Do you seriously think David would be carrying something that's taller than him all around? Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord today. He had this tiny little thing and he would just sit in the grassy fields and play to his sheep. And David did not worry about who was watching him. He did not care. His audience were a bunch of sheep. And if he did a good job, the only appreciation he would ever get was bah. In all of that, David wrote the book of Psalms. Now, the book of Psalms spans throughout David's life from the time he started off as a little shepherd boy all the way to him as he was king. How many of y'all have read the whole book of Psalms? The book of Psalms has 150 chapters. And a little quick trivia question, which is the biggest chapter in the Bible? It's Psalms 119. And how many verses does Psalms 119 have? It has 150, which is the biggest chapter in the Bible, and it's a huge one. So the word Psalms comes from the Greek word psalmoi, which means songs of praise. And the book of Psalms covers every single emotion a human faces in their life, from joy to sorrow to anger to fear and hope. And what does that tell you? Because it covers every single emotion, it means that no matter what our situation is, we have to always worship God. So what are the lessons we can learn from David's worship? First key lesson, I want you all to remember this, is that worship is personal. When you're out here in church, you're worshiping God and it's an intimate moment with Him. And when we worship God, we're saying, worthy is your name. Like, it's between us and God. It's not between the church and God. It's between you and God. One thing we can see from David is that he did not care who was around him when he was worshiping. Even when he was king, he did not care who was worshiping. And us as Christians, sometimes we get so scared about who's looking at us when we sing. We might be thinking, oh, if I sing a key, like that's a note that's a little off, people are going to judge me. Or if we dance funny, people are going to judge us. Or if we raise our hands and kneel down, people are going to think that we're crazy. But us as Christians should realize that worship is between us and God. It's not between your group of friends. It's between you and God. Another key lesson you can learn is that worship is essential during your trials. The one thing we can learn is that David did not wait for a perfect time to worship. He did not care whether he was at home in the palace or he did not care if he was in the nice field. Wherever he was, he worshiped God. In the Bible, we can see where David was hiding from King Saul, and he was hiding in the caves, and in that cave, he still worshiped God. Think about this. Saul is hunting this man down. David will be scared to death, but he was worshiping God through all of that. The next one I'd love to emphasize on is worship is warfare against the devil. So a little tiny story is that when David was a small boy, maybe let's say, I'm really bad with names, but maybe the size of like maybe that's all. He was called by King Saul to the palace to play for him. And why was he called to the palace to play? None of y'all know why he was called. But the thing is that the presence of God was on Saul. Notice how I said was on Saul. Because the presence of God left Saul and he was attacked by an evil spirit. And because of that, he would get angry. He would lash out at everyone else in court over there. And they said, and the servants of Saul said, "O king of Israel, why don't we bring a little kid who will play the kinnor for you? And this will calm you down and make you feel better." I know what I'm saying might be a little hard to visualize, so why don't we just watch a little clip too?
The Spirit of the Lord left my father, and a tormenting spirit often fills him with depression and fear.
Master, command your servants to seek out a man who is a skillful player on the kinnor. He will play soothing music, and you will soon be well again.
All right, find me someone and bring him here.
That is how I came to the palace.
And whenever the tormenting spirit troubled him, David would play the kinnor. Then Saul would feel better and the tormenting spirit would go away.
Y'all saw that, the evil spirits left, right? So when we worship God, we're not only fighting evil spirits, we're making a way for our blessings to come to us. Because remember, worship invites God's presence, and where God's presence is, the enemy cannot be there. The last key lesson we can learn from David's worship is that worship is a lifestyle. For David, worship was never confined only to the temple. He never thought, okay, I'm going to go to church today, I'll worship here, and tomorrow when I'm at the grocery store, I'm not going to worship. I'll be like, I want some tomatoes and maybe a watermelon. But wherever David went, he always worshiped because he wanted to honor God with everything he did. So coming to the last part of this is, why does worship matter? So the first thing is that worship brings us closer to God. When you worship God, you're developing a proper relationship with Him. And when you worship God, not only are you surrounding yourself with His presence, but you are dwelling in His shadow. The next thing is worship shifts our focus from our problems to God. How many of y'all have had a very bad day in your life? Like a really, really bad day. Remember one thing, guys, you always worship God even in the bad times, not just in the good times, but in the bad times as well. I don't know how many of y'all were here when I preached last time at Youth Explosion, but I said over there, it is easier to trust God when life is going easy, but it's hard to trust Him when life is hard. Same thing applies over here. It's easy to worship God when your life is going good, but it's hard to worship God when things are going bad. But one thing you should remember is that when you worship God, you are putting Him above your problems and you're putting Him above any challenge you face. What's the other reason why it matters? It's because worship strengthens our faith. When we sing worship songs, what are we doing? Are we just doing karaoke night, or are we actually meaning the words? When we all say your goodness is running after, what are we doing? Are we just singing it for the sake of hitting the note, or are we actually saying that your goodness is running after me? When we mean what we worship, God will start moving in our lives. Another point, which I'm going to come back to, is worship is warfare against the enemy. We already covered it, but that is a huge point over here. Remember, guys, when you worship God, you are pushing away all the problems or whatever plans the enemy is trying to put on you, you're pushing it away. And you're protecting yourself from spiritual attacks. How many of y'all believe that angels and demons exist? That's a good number. And remember, guys, there's always a battle happening between the two of them. And what are they fighting for? Is it because like the demons got kicked out of heaven? The angels and demons are fighting for you. The angels are fighting to protect you, and the demons are fighting to tear you down. And when you worship, you are surrounding yourself with this shield that protects you from the attacks of the enemy. And the last point is worship will renew your mind and your heart. When you worship God, you're aligning your heart and your mind to God. Many of us, when we sing the song, Lord, I give you my heart, I give you my soul, do we really mean it? So I'm going to leave y'all with a couple of questions that will come up on the screen. But one question I want to ask y'all is, how many of y'all actually mean the words you worship? Okay, that's good. And for those who don't know how to do it, like, just understand the meaning of what you're praising God for. So yeah, I'm going to leave y'all with 3 questions y'all can discuss in your small groups. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank y'all for listening.